Hey guys, welcome to Shots Up. My name's Phil and I'll be your host today. Today we're going to be talking about the Clippers and their free agency moves. And for that, I have my good friend Brandon joining me today. We've been college friends. We found out that each of us were huge Clippers fans back in the day, and we've been friends since. How's it going, Brandon?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to have you. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the elephant in the room, right? We've been hearing a lot of talk about James Harden possibly coming to the Clippers. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were of James Harden and how he would fit onto the Clippers team.
Yeah. That's a loaded question. Yeah, given James Harden's track record and how he's been over the years, and obviously the Clippers coming up short on some championship aspirations over the last decade. I'm definitely interested. Obviously, he's a Hall of Fame player. His track record with hopping around teams lately, and some of his playoff performances as of late, where there's kind of a lack of effort, and once he knows he's out, he's out. So those are obviously red flags, but from a pure talent perspective, he is something that we can use, just with his passing, scoring, and ability to get in the paint and actually get to the free throw line, which I feel like we've been lacking quite a bit the last couple of seasons, and we kind of hang around the perimeter, known as a 3-point team. Yeah, those are my first initial thoughts when you asked me that.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of disappointing to me, and we gotta kind of be real here, Brandon, right? We've done a lot of this talking ourselves, just through text and stuff over the past few seasons. It just seems like we set up the team in a way to be built around Paul George and Kawhi, right? And Paul George was supposed to be basically the de facto point guard of this team. For years, we tried it out, right? Like for the first year when Doc was here, it didn't work out. Paul George didn't like his role then, right? Because Doc Rivers was supposedly using him like Ray Allen, right? And so he didn't like that. So he didn't like just being like a spot up shooter and a movement shooter. He wanted the ball in his hands more. He wanted to be able to come off of pick and rolls. He wanted to be able to get the ball at the elbow and operate from there, right? Yep. So Ty Lue gave him the responsibility and that freedom to do what he wanted, right? So he made him the de facto point guard of this team. Now we've seen the past 3 years that that's probably not his best position, right? Because although, yeah, he can do those things, we've seen a lot of, let's just
sloppy
say,
handle.
Yeah, we've
sloppy handle late in games.
Yeah, yes. A lot of sloppy handles, a lot of bad passes where it's just like, dude, you're literally passing the ball right to the defense, right? Yeah. Stuff that it seems kind of like rudimentary, and a lot of what he does too as well is he always predetermines what he's going to do and he doesn't react, right? Like he's like, oh, I'm going to run this play and this guy should be here. But then if something goes off, like he'll just throw the pass anyways, right? Just expecting that guy to be there, not actually seeing what's developing, right? And so that's why I say that's probably not his best position. So then that led the Clippers to bring in Russell Westbrook, right? Well, first before that, we brought in John Wall, and that didn't work out. Russell Westbrook then came in.
Wait, you don't want to mention Rajon Rondo before that?
Oh, we brought in Rajon Rondo. I forgot about that. And he barely played in the playoffs, right? He got his minutes taken away by Patrick Beverley, which is not a traditional point guard, right? So, anyways, we come to this point where we've got Russell Westbrook as the point guard of the team. Paul George seemed very comfortable with that. I think Russell Westbrook played pretty well for the Clippers, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I just wanted to say, basically, Paul George and Kawhi need a point guard next to them at this point. If
Yep.
if Paul George and Kawhi aren't going to be the de facto point guards handling the ball, 80% of the time, then they do need a de facto point guard to come in. And I think that's where James Harden comes in, and he can do that, right? Like if you look at actual point guards on the market, Dame is probably number one, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah, he is number one. And then I think James Harden is number two. Actual
Yep.
point guards that you hear is on the trade market, or that you can trade, or that you can sign in free agency over the next year or two, right? Like, which we already passed free agency, so now you have to wait until next summer, right? So basically, these are the two guys. And I would say out of the point guards in the league, he's probably a top maybe 7 point guard in the league, right? James
Yeah,
Harden.
I would agree.
Yeah. So you're getting a pretty good point guard there to come in and really help facilitate and set the table for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to really just be scorers in a way. And then on defense, late in games, these guys can have more juice to play both ends of the floor, right? So that's kind of how I see it. I just want to talk about, I guess, where I want you to dive a little bit further into whether you think the fit with Harden and Paul George and Kawhi is a good pairing, or like is it so good that we need to actually go out there and give up real assets to trade for them, or is it not?
Yeah, no, great question. And yeah, with Russell Westbrook at point guard, you see defenses kind of sagging off, and they can put more attention onto Kawhi and Paul George just due to Russ's lack of offense and shooting capabilities from deep. So yeah, I agree 100%. We do need that point guard that can actually, hold the defense honest and actually open up these two stars that we've been trying to utilize for some time now, and have them have fresh legs late in games, and not putting too much pressure on them. And I do think James Harden would bring that. He draws a lot of attention. He will definitely open up a lot of open shots for Paul George and Kawhi, and just his dribble penetration is just going to give him, that much more of an opening, which is all these guys need, which we're not necessarily getting for Russ. We're definitely getting the effort, but defensively, they kind of sag off on him, and they're allowed to put more attention onto some other players. But in terms of your second part of the question, is in terms of assets, it's hard because he's technically going to be a 1-year rental, right? And given the last few teams that he's forced his way off of, you have to kind of gauge, and where does Lawrence Frank and Jerry West and Steve Ballmer and Ty Lue really want to gauge on the potential of actually having him more than this 1-year rental, right? So the market, and it doesn't seem like everything is kind of focused around us. So it's interesting to see like maybe where other teams are offering in terms of assets for him.
I honestly haven't heard of any other
Exactly.
team. I mean, I've heard of other teams possibly being interested, and I think other teams would come in if the price was just like absolutely low, right? But I've heard that based off of the reporting, teams have called, and they say basically Morey's asking for a high price to trade for James Harden. And so, and I don't think that's just coming from the Clippers. That's probably coming from a few other teams that kind of sniffed around just to see if like, hey, like, just like you were saying, like if this guy's a 1-year rental, what does it really take to get him? Can we just get him for like, maybe a few second round picks, right? Like, I'm just saying, maybe some teams thought that when they called. Daryl Morey's probably asking for multiple first round picks, multiple, guys that can actually be starters, right? Possibly like a young star or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what he's asking for, but seemed like he's asking for a lot. So I do want to ask you though, what do you think some trades are that the Clippers should actually offer for James Harden? Being that he's a 1-year rental, Now, there could be also the case where we do get a kind of wink wink deal, right? Where we do trade for him and he says, hey, I'm willing to come back and re-sign with you guys next summer. But then that begs the question, what is the contract extension going to be, right? Like the reason why him in Philadelphia right now can't come to terms is not because, from what I've heard, it's not because of the price tag. It's the years on the contract, right? I think Daryl Morey doesn't want to give him the full 4 years. Maybe something like a 3-year with a team option or something like that, or possibly even a 2-year with 2 years non-guaranteed. I'm not sure, right? Does that mean then that we have to sign him on a 4-year max deal, right?
Yeah.
With this guy
underneath that.
basically being, how old is he? He's 34 now, so he would be 38 by the end of that contract. 38 or 39 by the end of that contract.
Yeah. I guess that does line up with Paul George and Kawhi's age and where they'll be when their contracts are coming due. But yeah, you see this every year, disgruntled star wants to get off his team, and it's more beneficial for Daryl Morey in this case to move him and not have this saga play out through the year. And us knowing James Harden over the years, he'll live and breathe the animosity that will come with it, and not put forth towards the effort, once the season starts, if he still is on Philadelphia. So yeah, and you don't want to get into a situation where you're the only one bidding against yourself, right?
Right.
And forcing, and just putting assets out there that, Daryl Morey would have took less. We obviously know from his track record, he's a hard bargain driver, on the trade market, but he's always thrown out lofty expectations for his players. But is that really what he's going to accept? Will he accept something less? So
Yeah.
I guess some trade scenarios that I'm thinking of is obviously, some salary matching to take the deal work. Like a Morris and Batum, Morris and Rocco, I feel like would get the salaries pretty close. You know more about salary cap space. I'll let you talk to that in a sec. And then, our first two round picks, first round picks, both of them.
So you're saying both 2028 and 30? Oof.
Yeah.
Okay.
Without giving up a Terrence Mann and a Bones Highland type, and still kind of keeping our young core there. Obviously, if we want to include one of them, pulling one of the first round picks to level it out, but you know how the Clippers have treated first round picks as of the last few years. So I would not be surprised.
It's been a long time since we haven't cared about first round picks. Yeah. Which, if you think about it, we've been kind of contenders ever since that Lob City era. We had 2 years where we weren't necessarily competing. We were retooling the roster, and then we got Kawhi and Paul George, and then we're back to contending, right? So I don't think first round picks have really meant much for a team that's, trying to contend. We're always just trying to win now. But it's kind of funny that your trade packages, both of them, did not include Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, Bones Highland at all. It was basically just salary matching with guys that are expiring contracts, and then 2 first round picks, unprotected, I would assume.
Yep.
I don't know if you heard the podcast, Zach Lowe's podcast, but basically he was saying, to his knowledge, all he's heard is that the Clippers are pretty reticent to include Terrence Mann, Bones Highland, any of their kind of young, talented guys, right? Even Brandon Boston, I heard, was like a guy that they didn't want to move off of. And so just knowing what I think possibly Daryl Morey's position is, like where his starting prices for trading Harden, like I said, it's pretty high. And then where the Clippers are starting their negotiation, I think they're so far apart right now. I don't think they've even had true discussions on the trade, maybe just kind of like starting bids, like, hey, like Daryl's like, this is what it's going to take. And the Clippers are like, well, this is all we're offering, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the same thing that you're saying, except I don't even think they're offering first round picks. I think they're just saying, hey, look, take Morris, take Robert Covington. They're expiring deals. You can get off of James Harden. He's a headache. He's probably not going to come back anyways next season. Maybe they're offering like 2 second-round picks or something like that, right? At least you're getting something back, right? And then you don't have to deal with this anymore. I think that might be where they're at right now. And so they're so far apart. And I think the reason why they're so far apart right now is, like you said, first, he's a 1-year rental. And second, we just don't know who else is bidding and what they're offering. So we don't want to get into this bidding war with ourselves, just saying, oh, you're that far away. Let me, come up to halfway or 3/4 of the way and just start offering all these assets that we might not necessarily need to give up. But I think let me throw out a trade for you. And this seems kind of where I would draw the line. I just want to hear your thoughts on this one and if you would accept it. First of all, I think like any James Harden trade is going to have to include PJ Tucker as well, just because he has 3 years left on his contract. I think they want to get off of that money in a James Harden trade. So let's just see if you would do this. James Harden and PJ Tucker for Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, Terrence Mann, Jason Preston, just as a salary filler. We need that. And the 2028 first round pick. Is that something where if push came to shove for James Harden, you would do? And this is like not knowing if he's going to re-sign with us. This is just knowing like, hey, he might be a rental. We might be able to re-sign him. We're not sure.
Mm-hmm. First initial impression is, obviously, me and you both are indifferent on, Morris and Preston, and obviously Daryl's going to want a pick. Just giving up Terrence Mann just seems like such a valuable asset. I feel like if Ty Lue just kind of gives him the right minutes, like he can really blossom, and that would be a hard asset to see go. Like some of our former players that we've traded away and seen blossom, a la Shea. Not saying Terrence Mann is that caliber, but I would hate to see him get, thrown into this trade and then James leave next year. And then, we've slowly been building the small core that Lawrence Frank has, with Terrence Mann, Brandon Boston, and then just signing, KJ Martin. We'll talk about that in a bit.
And then Bones Highland.
Bones Highland, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just having that kind of like young core with our old core, and just kind of have this gradual like changing of the guard as, PG and Kawhi get older. So from that perspective, I would be very reluctant to sign off on a trade with at least Terrence Mann. And, Norm Powell, didn't get as much reps with Kawhi and PG last year as we would have liked. So I just feel like kind of a running back scenario and having him, as that 6th man role and him building comfortability. Like, as you remember, his first 10, 15 games with us, he just kind of didn't gel and didn't, mix with the group. And then as time went on, he did. So it's hard for me to see him go. And, there was plenty of build up and chemistry towards the end of the year. So I would say no, just because James Harden 1-year rental situation, and where I value Terrence Mann and Norman Powell as assets for the Clippers.
Gotcha. So what if instead of Terrence Mann, we had Bones Highland in there? And then we probably then would have to include Broco just as salary filler, just because Bones Highland isn't making as much compared to Terrence Mann. But anyways, what if it was Bones Highland instead of Terrence Mann in that trade scenario?
I mean, that's a little bit more easy for me to digest, just because I'm not too tied into Bones yet. We haven't really seen him play, full extended minutes. His frame, I guess, for the position and defensively, there's a liability. Whereas Terrence Mann has that bigger body, kind of fits more of the defensive Clippers mode. Obviously, Bones is, a stud highlight on the offensive end, but where we're headed with this team, it's just kind of, both offense and defense. So I feel like Terrence Mann still fits that need. So yeah, I'd be more interested, in seeing Bones get thrown in there instead of Terrence.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think I would rather include Terrence Mann than Bones, and I'll tell you why.
I know you're a big Bones fan. Go ahead.
No. It's not even that. So this is why. We saw that Tyronn Lue was very hesitant to use Terrence Mann in an expanded role, right? But he started him at point guard for 14 games before All-Star break. Then we got Russell Westbrook, and then Terrence Mann went back to the bench and he started playing, like 20 minutes a game, right? Just think about if we do get James Harden, right? And we have Russell Westbrook still. Ty Lue's going to start Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard and Ivica Zubac together. You just know it's going to happen, right? There's no way he's going to include T-Man into that starting lineup. So if that's the case, T-Man is still going to be in the same role where he's only playing 20 minutes a game. You know what I mean? I agree with you. I think T-Man would fit amazing if he was a starter next to James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi. I think he would play that Bruce Brown role perfectly, right? Like that's why Bruce Brown, even though Bruce Brown came off the bench in the playoffs, this guy was playing 30 minutes plus, right?
Yep.
Terrence Mann would fit in so well just because of his versatility on offense and defense and just what he brings. Like he doesn't need the ball. He just goes out, plays hard. He has, good vision for a guy that's going to be playing the wing position. He can rebound for his size. He's a good defender, especially a good point of attack defender, which we're going to need with those other three guys out there. So I do think yes, if Tyronn Lue was going to wise up and actually play this guy over 30 minutes, yes, he's the better fit and we should keep him. But just knowing how he's dicked around T-Man over the past few years with his playing time, there's really no need to hold on to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I agree to the point. Definitely Ty Lue is by far, without a doubt. I don't know how many times me and you texted last year. I'm just like, what the hell is Ty Lue doing with T-Man? And really just not utilizing him and therefore, hindering him to getting to his full potential. So yeah, if Ty Lue is going to treat it like this, I obviously hope not if Terrence Mann is still on the team, but if he's going to treat him, like how he did last year in terms of, minutes and, not starting him, then yeah, I mean, I see your point and would be okay with seeing him go and, blossom and prosper elsewhere where a coach is actually going to, capitalize on his talents. So
look, and it's not that I want T-Man traded at all. I absolutely don't. Like I said, I think he would be amazing with James Harden and Paul George and Kawhi. But it just doesn't seem like Ty Lue trusts him for whatever reason. I think we've seen proof enough for the past 2 seasons with how T-Man his game has developed to a point where the fans, you and I and many others, feel very comfortable with him being a starter level type of player for the Clippers. But Ty Lue obviously just doesn't believe that, right? So that's why I'm just like, if push came to shove and that's what it took to get the deal done, I think the Clippers should do it. But we texted a few days ago and I said to you, I'm like 60, 70% sure this deal is going to get done. At the end of the day, James Harden's going to end up on the Clippers somehow, some way. We might have to sit through kind of a lot of BS for a few weeks, a few months or something like that, but he's going to eventually be a Clipper. I have been over the past few days getting an inkling like that he's not going to be a Clipper. I kind of have this feeling that he's going to just end up going back and re-signing with Philadelphia. Cuz the reason why is because it's so easy for him to just go back to Philadelphia if Morey just says, "Hey, look, let's sign a deal. Let's sign a deal.
Mhm.
Like I'll give you the contract you want. Maybe it's not 4 years, maybe it's 3 years with a partial guarantee on the fourth year, right? But somehow, some way, it's just easier for him to just kind of negotiate with James and just be like, hey, let's come to an agreement on this contract, right? Rather than the Clippers and Philadelphia being so far apart on trade discussions
Yeah.
and then them finding an actual deal together. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts over the past like day or two. Like, I just feel like, hey, man, I just don't even think this is gonna happen, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, just talking about how you think James Harden, Daryl Morey may just offer him an extension and stay and give him the money he's looking for. I can easily see that too because like chances are if they actually move Harden, they're immediately removing themselves from playoff contention. I feel like next year from what they're going to get. Then they're going to be in full rebuild mode. And they've come so far with like Joel Embiid's progress and getting him, to where he is as one of the premier top, tickets in the
The
NBA.
MVP, the MVP,
Yeah,
man.
and an MVP and just like putting butts in the stands and selling out that stadium. Like James Harden goes and you know, you get some picks, some quality players. Like you're not in the top three, the top four, which is where they want to be. So I, I, I concur. I totally agree that I could see them, just going ahead and giving him the money and him staying there. I don't know how happy or what the sentiment will be like with Philly fans and the team itself just kind of going through that situation. But I guess that's to be determined. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's probably the better route for them. No matter what the fans say, or if feelings are a little bruised, just because it's like if you do this and you kind of start this kind of retooling process over again, is Joel Embiid gonna have that appetite after going through the Ben Simmons thing, after going through this James Harden thing, to if they don't win, let's say if they don't win next year, is he really gonna want to stay in
yep,
Philadelphia? Right?
yep.
Like,
And then you'd be jeopardizing, like this whole franchise. You've been building up. The trust the process. So Um, yeah, I easily can see that, and I think a lot of too this whole James Harden's like obviously our talks are far apart, and I mean any negotiation you don't want to show your cards off the get go. You want to start small. Everyone starts high, and you keep inching your way down to the middle. But I think the whole Damian Lillard wanting out now after how many years people have been expecting him to finally, you know, go to a contender and not be ride or die Portland Trailblazer to his jersey is hung up in the rafters. I think until that dust is settled, this is definitely on the back burner because and this is how it happens every year with trade deadlines, and it's whoever is the top candidate in that trade deadline is they have to be the mover to go first. Obviously, you see these small deals here, but I want to ask you. I mean, what do you think of us making uh, an offer for Dame and what kind of assets we could entertain and dangle out there in front of Portland? I know they recently just came out with kind of what they wanted in return, which is, they're looking for 4 first-round picks and 2 quality players. So, I mean, obviously, we don't have the picks. I mean, we have quality players, but maybe we can bring in a third team to facilitate that. So I would definitely prefer Damian Lillard over James Harden.
well, I think anybody would prefer Dame to James Harden. Um, it's hard for me to actually see something where we can put a package together that's convincing. I think the only way he's going to Miami is if they find the third team to take Tyler Harrell and they're able to get some more assets back to really make it convincing for Portland to do it, something like 3 unprotected firsts and 3 pick swaps or something like that, right? Like I think they need more than four first round picks. I think they need probably 6 as a starter. If you look at what Kevin Durant got, right? And Kevin Durant is older than Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard's also has a guaranteed contract for 4 years, so you have that you have a window of at least 4 years with him. Whereas I think Kevin Durant's was 3, so it's like 1 year or less. It's really hard for me to see us putting together that kind of package, because it's like, one, I don't think that any of the players we're going to offer are better than Tyler Harrell. Tyler Harrell would be the 3rd best player on this team if he was on the Clippers right now. So from that standpoint, one, like Tyler Harrell is the best player in the deal if it was like our offer versus their offer. And then there's just no way for us to offer 6 first round picks. The most we can offer is 4, which is 2 unprotected first and 2 pick swaps. So yeah, I don't know. I can't really see it happening.
Yeah.
Sorry to burst your bubble.
You always gotta hope. You always gotta go for, the shining star off the get-go. So I wonder what, Lawrence and Jerry and Steve Ballmer are kind of talking about on that front. It'd be interesting to hear their thoughts on it. But
yeah. Well, talking about Harden possibly not joining the Clippers in a situation where we need to run it back with this team, I kind of wanted your thoughts on what you think the outlook of this team is for the season if basically we run it back.
Yeah. It's just broken record. We've heard this how many years? Health. Can Kawhi and PG be as healthy as possible come playoffs and us avoiding any type of injuries? So, I mean, I have a more, better outlook than last year, just because we had quite a few changes last year. Just kind of getting our role players adapted in, getting Norm into the mix, Plumlee, and obviously Westbrook and Bones. Those are all our 4 adds to last year's roster, and it was rough, in the middle and when they're coming on. But I felt like as the season progressed, there started to become a lot more, familiarity with them amongst the core group. So, I mean, I have no problem running it back. I feel like with them just kind of, having an extra year in a full training camp, just to adapt under Ty Lue's system and get used to Paul George and Kawhi. You combine that with, some health throughout the season. I still think we're a top contender in the West. Unfortunately, Kawhi's injury, kind of came in at the worst time last year, but I felt like our roster stacked up well. I felt like we could have took out the Suns. We got off to a hot start in that series, and I feel like we were probably the best matchup for the Nuggets in the West last year with that roster.
Yeah. Although I do think the Clippers would still be a top 4 team next season, I still think that there are definitely moves that they can make to make it a run it back season with maybe an upgrade somewhere.
Yeah. Morris has to go.
Yeah, Morris,
we
right?
we have to upgrade that contract at some point. If we have him on our team next year,
he can't start this season with the Clippers. I just think that if you allow Ty Lue the option of having Marcus Morris in the rotation, he's going to use him. He's going to start him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like how he did last season. Yes, eventually he got benched, but I feel like he might be like, oh, okay, we'll have this plan in place where you start, but we'll manage your minutes throughout the season so you're more fresh, right? Like you'll have your legs with you. So yes, you'll only play 20 minutes a game, but you'll be our starter. You'll play like the first 10 minutes of each half, and then we'll close out with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Probably Nico Batum or Terrence Mann in that lineup. So like, yeah, that is a case where they could just fully run it back. But even then, I really don't want Marcus Morris on this team anymore. I think he's completely cooked. Like, I don't want him playing at all, to be honest with you. Yes.
I agree 100%. And I mean, we talked about this and texted quite a bit on the tail end of the season. Is Batum is looking old, man. He's looking like father time is catching up with him. It's just kind of like a lot of wasted minutes out there where he was just kind of floating around, and he would, take his high shot threes that he'd just get a quick pass from, and that was about it. And it just doesn't seem like he was helping the roster as years prior in the second half of the season last year. So I mean, I think there's an upgradable situation there along with Morris.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said the perfect backup or the perfect transition plan would be to get John Collins, but he went to Utah for like nothing. For like nothing. I mean, it was obviously they had salary cap space, so they can just absorb his contract, which we couldn't do. But it's like, I mean, we could have. I mean, yes, that was the best possible deal for them to just fully get off of his contract, not have anything come their way in terms of salary. And they created a huge TPE trade exception for that. We couldn't offer the same type of thing. We could just offer, expiring contracts, so they do have to take back salary. But then after this season, that money is off the books. But then they wouldn't get a huge TP like they got. But anyways, I mean, yeah, for Atlanta, I guess that was a decent deal. I wouldn't have done it personally. I would have waited for a better deal, but apparently they've been trying to trade him for like 3 straight years. So like maybe that was the best. Maybe that was the best offer they got. Yeah, but anyways, I think we definitely need to upgrade that 4 position. And I've been hearing like, hey, why can't Kawhi just play the 4? It's like, dude, Kawhi's not going to play the 4, like especially all season long. Maybe like we've seen it where he does play the 4 like in a playoff game, even regular season games, but only for like a few minutes at a time. Like, you don't want to have this guy starting at the 4, especially because Ty Lue seems so hesitant to start T-Man, right? Like, if we run it back, obviously I would want T-Man in that starting lineup, and then Kawhi to play the 4 and Paul George to play the 3. Like, that'd be the ideal lineup, but I just can't really see Ty Lue, first of all, really doing that like on a full-time basis, like throughout the whole season and then the playoffs. So we definitely just like need somebody there to start at the 4 that's like younger, more athletic. Maybe it's like KJ Martin. Do you think he can be a starter like for this team? Like, we just traded for him. Like, we have that. We have this on our show notes. Like, why don't we just talk about it now?
We could. I also will throw another idea out there, but yeah, we'll start with KJ Martin. I mean, first off, I feel like 2 second rounders for a flyer on him is absolutely up our alley. And I mean, I felt like all the games we played against Houston last year, I feel like he killed us in them. Like, I became a fan of KJ Martin just from being a Clippers fan and watching us play Houston, because this guy was like killed us. He was like high
he had
flyer.
like 4 dunks on us each game. Like, every game, like he would play. He has like at least like 3 or 4 dunks on us.
Yeah, I mean, he averaged 13 points, 5 rebounds, 57% shooting last season. So, and then interesting stat is 80% within 3 feet of the rim. Obviously, those are a lot of dunks, but you want someone that can finish there. So
yeah, I saw that too. I was looking at his shooting stats, and it's like he's progressed throughout the years as well. Like, if you look at his jump from his second to third season, he got some more minutes, but then he was averaging more points. He shoots amazing from within 3 feet, right? It's because he's dunking everything. But not only that, but if you look at his shooting from 3 feet to 10 feet, which is like, it means that from his second to third season, he realized, hey, I can't just dunk every single thing. Like there needs to be something like a floater here or something there, like in that in-between range from mid-range to like getting all the way to the basket where he's able to finish. Like his shot attempts there went up and his field goal percentage from that range also went up from his second to third season. So just the jump in volume plus more efficiency from that range just kind of shows me he's added something to his game from year 2 to year 3, where it's just not all dunks. And then his 3-point shooting, I don't know, it's stayed pretty stagnant throughout his career so far. Like I think his rookie season was his best in terms of field goal percentage from 3. I might be wrong, but I think actually his this past season was the worst. It was like 31%, right?
I think it was 34 actually.
This past season?
Yeah.
34. Okay, so then his second season was his worst, and then he came back a little bit with 34% this past season. So not bad. Not bad.
34. Yeah, 34%. And shooting 57, from the field. You'll that all day long for someone, of his age in that caliber. So
yeah,
I mean, we're not hoping he's going to be a sharpshooter or anything like that. So 34% is decent for all the other stuff he brings to the table.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Like I like KJ Martin. I don't think he can actually start on this team. Like the better option obviously is Terrence Mann, right? Like they do similar things. KJ Martin is just way more athletic, so then he can be an actual roller where he can finish on guys. T-Man, we've seen him in that pick and roll where he rolls, but then he's more of that kind of facilitator, where he can pass out of that short roll, right? And he can obviously finish as well, but just not as athletically as KJ Martin can. So I would rather have Terrence Mann start over KJ Martin, but like it just gives us another dynamic instead of like having Nicholas Batum as our only 4 off the bench, like him or Rocco, which both aren't like have zero rim pressure, right? They're just straight like they're setting picks and popping and they're shooting threes. They're standing in the corner shooting threes. KJ Martin as that dynamic where like he can even play alongside a Nico Batum. Nico Batum can do the whole pick and pop thing. He can stand in the corner and shoot threes. But then KJ Martin can play, whatever forward position you want to call him, but he can set the screen and actually roll and provide that rim pressure, right? Both him and Plumlee can do the same thing there. So it's like, it just adds another element. Like if we want to go small and like, let's say we have, Russell Westbrook, Terrence Mann, KJ Martin, Paul George, Kawhi, right? Like if we go really small, right? We actually still have some rim pressure in that situation, but yet we're small enough, we're athletic enough where we can just fly around and still have kind of enough size out there with Paul George and Kawhi. And just because like also Russell Westbrook is big for his size as well. So it's just kind of like everyone's 6'4" and above, 6'4" to 6'8", and we have a lot of shooting, we have the rolling, we have rim pressure, we have defense. So I can see it in that situation where KJ Martin might get some run where he's like a really small, he plays in small lineups. And then also like off the bench, he just adds that like rolling pressure.
Yeah. And also the fit to like our young core that we spoke about earlier. If we want to like look into maintaining him, for another contract or so, I mean, his age and just kind of fits right along with, Bones and Brandon Boston, Terrence Mann still young. So
Yo, is Brandon Boston gonna get any run?
No.
No, not at all, right? No. Like there's no way. It's because, and I think he actually deserves a shot, don't you? Like I think he actually deserves a shot at like a consistent like 14 minutes a game for like a 20 to 30 game stretch. You know what I mean? Just to see what he could do, right? Like let's just say like just to see like if he can be our 11th man, and in the case where somebody goes down, he's able to come in and like, contribute. Like we just know what he can bring, right? Like just so we can find out what he can actually bring, right? I think like with what's his name, Amir Coffey, he had like 2 seasons of that where he actually got opportunities to show what he could do with time out there. And now we know what he is. And honestly, he shouldn't play at all.
Yeah.
So instead of him being like the 11th or 12th man, I'd rather have Brandon Boston be that 11th or 12th man, where like if Kawhi or PG misses a game, like he actually gets like 14 minutes in that game. You know what I mean? And then we can just
Yeah.
see like, oh, how has he progressed from his rookie season until now? Because last season he barely got a chance, you know?
I agree. I mean, he's a hooper too. Like he needs he needs consecutive minutes. He can't just come out and just play 2 spot minutes here. He really needs to get in the flow of the game. And once he's feeling himself, like you saw, like his rookie season, when you have 28 against the Celtics one time, just utmost confidence and just he's a hooper. You know, you need extended minutes for those guys to really, you know, get into their rhythm and, you know, show who they are. So.
Yeah, and
But
I think Bones is the same way where like he needs those consistent minutes to kind of like get himself going and like get in the rhythm and really be able to heat up because like those type of guys I mean I'm not sure about Brandon yet because we just haven't seen enough from him yet. But Bones, like I've seen enough throughout his 2-year career so far because he actually got an opportunity in Denver is like when he heats up, he can get real hot. You know, he can change the dynamic of a game just with his like scoring because he can in a quarter hit like 4 threes, you know? So yeah, I guess you know, we talked about the outlook for the Clippers. If they decide to run it back, possible trade scenarios with James Harden and his fit. But let's talk about some transactions that they've actually made aside from the KJ Martin thing because we talked about him. How did you like the re-signing of Russell Westbrook and Mason Plumlee? Russell Westbrook came back on a 1-year deal for the veterans minimum at $3.8 million. I think that was pretty good value, obviously. And then Mason Plumlee came back for 1 year at $5 million, where it was reported that he got several different offers that were for more than that, maybe for longer than that. I don't know, but he definitely had better offers on the table. But he decided to come back and play for the Clippers. I just want you to give me your thoughts on those two signings and kind of what you see for them this upcoming season with the Clippers.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think both are just your standard veteran deals that we see every year of these veterans who want to play in this city for this team and will take less money to do so. Obviously, Los Angeles. So, and I feel like they were well received by the fans last year. I mean, Russell Westbrook obviously got off to a little shaky start, you know, coming off the fiasco with the Lakers and kind of a fit for us. But I feel like as the year progressed, he really kind of came into his own and the fans really received him well. And just having those like hard hustle, tough minutes, tough rebounds, you know, really was received well by the fans. So I'm glad we brought him back especially for that type of price. You know, so we'll see. You know, with James Harden, where he's going to fit if he ends up coming to the Clippers, and how he's going to play alongside with Russ, and what kind of roles that are going to be defined on that front. But yeah, I think Russ is definitely a good signing. Plumlee also, I think for the value is another great deal. I felt like even at a few times we talked about this, he kind of outplayed Zoo in some minutes here and there, and he's just more athletic than Zoo. He's not flat-footed like Zoo. He's quick. He can pass. He's agile. Yeah, some of his passing ability is, I feel like, it's up there with one of the top centers passing abilities. It's just, you know, he's just a backup role player. So, and we've been missing that for quite some time. You know, just having a really solid backup five that can do multiple things. You know, just a good utility backup five. So
Yeah, and I mean, I don't need to remind other Clippers fans that we basically had no backup center for more than half of the season. We had a two-way guy, Moses Brown, who's not an NBA player. He's tall. I'll give him that. He's tall. He's 7'2", but he's definitely not an NBA player. And it was so funny because even though he's not an NBA caliber player, when we actually put him in the sparing minutes that we played him, it made the team better just because we needed a backup center that bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so crazy. So it's like, just imagine like what the Clippers ended up with, the seventh best record in the league, or the sixth best record in the league. Wait, was it sixth? Hold on. Oh, no. It was the fifth best record in the league. It was really close. It was really close with the Warriors, but we edged them out. So that's how we ended up playing the Suns.
Yeah, in the West.
Wait, am I tripping? Were we fifth or sixth?
We're fifth in the West.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but we were really close to being in the play-in. You know what I mean? Like, we were one game away from being in the play-in, and a lot of our record could have been avoided by having a true backup center. I think if Mason Plumlee was our center from the beginning of the year, we probably would have won like 5 or 6 more games, to be honest with you. Like,
Yeah,
just by having a backup center. Yeah. Not that would have made any difference, because Kawhi and Paul George were out in the playoffs. I mean, all but one game for Kawhi, or 2 games for Kawhi, but it wouldn't have mattered. But I'm just talking about like having a floor raiser in the regular season. Like, Mason Plumlee does that. So I'm glad that we got him back. I'm glad that we got Russell Westbrook back on a value deal. I'm glad that it was a 2-year deal, but it's a player option for the second. He's most likely gonna opt out. Yeah, he's most likely gonna opt out of that. But funnily enough, it's like, if we get James Harden, like, he may become more valuable to this team than he is currently, just because I honestly think that Bones Highland is a better fit for the team as it's currently constructed at point guard than Russell Westbrook, just because of the spacing issues with Russell. Like, I think Russ can start. And it was like what T. Lue was doing when Russ first came to the Clippers, where he was sitting him at the end of games, right? Like, I think Bones Highland fits into the role better where we can close with him. So it's like, I hope that Bones actually gets to play more than Russell Westbrook. But Russ does some things for this team where he really brings that, like, that energy for this team. He really brings like he knows how Paul George plays, so he's able to table set for him. It's just when it comes down to crunch time with both of those two guys, the spacing is a definite issue, right? So that's why I just think like he offers, like, Bones Highland offers more. But if James Harden is here, it most likely means, like, in my view, like, T-Man is probably gone in that situation. Even Bones Highland might be gone in that situation. Norm might be gone in that situation. All 3 of those guys might be gone, So then Russell Westbrook becomes very valuable, because a lot of our depth has been traded away. So, yeah, I mean, overall, though, I think it was a fine signing for both of those guys. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I wanted to get your thoughts on one. I mean, obviously, we mentioned this multiple times on the pod. Our need for a power forward position. Bull is on the market. What's your thoughts on on us potentially getting him on a very valuable deal and taking a flyer? He does stretch the floor, unlike our other bigs, and he's just big. I mean, he'll take up a lot of real estate, and he can actually step out.
Well, so we have a full roster right now. We have 16 players. That's not including Jason Preston's contract. So, like, if we guarantee his deal, then it's 16 players, and we would have to cut someone. He's most likely just going to get cut, or there's going to be a trade somewhere where we include him. Yeah. So basically, then we need to get rid of 2 roster spots just to get Bull. I don't think anybody else. I don't think I would get rid of anybody just to bring him on.
Not get rid of someone, just amongst. I mean, I feel like if a trade is along, then a spot opens.
I feel like even if we got him, he wouldn't play. To be honest with you, I just think that, like, he showed sparks throughout his career so far. but he hasn't put it together yet where he can actually be a good NBA player. And that's why Orlando Magic cut him. Dude, they're not even a good team and they cut him, right? And his deal was only for $2.2 million this season. And you're telling me they cut a guy and they're not even competing for a championship this season. Maybe they're competing for a playoff spot this season, but they ended up cutting him. So why should a team that's trying to contend for a title try to sign this guy? He's not there yet to me. Maybe in like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just a fun thought. I feel like he would be a fan favorite. Everyone would jump on it. I mean, he does some of the stuff we want, but yeah, to your point, I mean, he wouldn't be playing really meaningful minutes, but it would be interesting to have a couple 7-footers, just 5-4 spot at some stretches throughout the game. So
yeah, I mean, if I had to give my comparison to someone, he's like probably like a homeless version of Victor Wembanyama. Right? Like Chet Holmgren is probably like a working man's version of Victor Wembanyama. Bol Bol is like a homeless version of Victor Wembanyama.
As long as security doesn't slap Britney Spears, so.
Yeah, you gonna watch that game later?
Yeah, definitely. You might as well. We should just fly out to Vegas right now and hop on a PJ and go out there.
All right. I mean, that does it, guys. We're about to fly out to Vegas. Thanks for joining us.
No,
but for real, I think that's about it for us. Thanks for joining me, Brandon. We talk about the Clippers a lot outside of being recorded and putting it up on YouTube. But I'm glad that you could join me and we can get this on tape and we can share it with other Clippers fans.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Appreciate having me on. Look forward to the season and definitely some trades ahead, hopefully.
All right, man. Thank you, guys. Peace.